right. Well, I am Tori Tracy. I am the manager of the community engagement program here at NAMI Maine. And today for our podcast, I am here with Donald Burr from the Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast. Donald, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, Tori. Yeah, like you say, I'm Donald Burr from the Professional Logging Contractors of the Northeast, and we do safety trainings, amongst other things, where we try to bring important information to loggers.
So we've been kind of collaborating for the past 2 years, right? Been up there and all over the state, from Denmark to Fort Kent. When was it that you and your agency decided that, we kind of need to bring some mental health into our safety training?
Honestly, I don't remember the initial thought. I know a couple of years prior, uh, in the middle of COVID there somewhere, it was recommended that I reach out to NAMI. And I talked to one of your other people in the house and did a podcast with her for us. And we originally were going to do it as a video on Zoom, recorded kind of a thing, but it didn't, neither of our internets would support it. So it turned into being just an audio version of it where we showed some pictures for the video. So I don't remember exactly what triggered it. It was just somebody suggested it. And so we did that one. And then sometime later, it was brought up again, maybe we should look at mental health again. I'm sure it is. I'm sure, honestly, I can tell you, I don't remember when it was, but I'm sure I know how it happened. Is every year we get together as a committee and we invite anybody who has any interest in logging and safety or has some stakehold in logging, including contractors, insurance people, the agents, the loss control folks. We invite you folks there now and other different people that we work with. And we just sit around a big table and we say, what topics do you think that we should cover this year? And what you referenced is our annual safety trainings, where we go across the state and bring new classes every year to our loggers, and trying to move the ball forward and bring ideas to them and training to them that they wouldn't necessarily get during the year. Something that we can do. We source the instructors, we source the topics through this committee. And so I'm sure somebody said, maybe we should do something on mental health. And then that prompted me to contact NAMI, and they said, you need to talk to Tori.
I'm sure that's probably not really how it went, but okay, well, I'll accept it, right? So we've done it for for the past 2 years. We're going into our third year, which I'm excited about. Definitely love going, from one end of the state to the other end of the state. Great people. On top of the mental health piece that we talk about, what are some of the other parts or the trainings in that safety training that you give for the loggers?
So a couple interesting things here. One of our mandates for these spring trainings is every year bring something new and different that we haven't done before. So, and I'm sure I had this conversation with you after the first year. Hey, we probably are not going to call you back next year because we want to change things up. But after your first class, the roaring response was, we need more of this. So now our challenge is to keep mental health as a topic, but then expand it. And then what we've found with you and actually two of the other trainers is that you're getting calls during the year asking you questions.
Yes.
So we looked around the table and said, that's a win-win. I mean, if we're making the employees and no, let's give a little background to mechanized logging, which is really what it is today. I mean, most people, when they think logging, they think a guy on a chainsaw and he gets out of a skidder, cuts a tree down, holds a cable to it and brings it to the yard and deals with it there. And that's not how logging is done anymore. Logging is done as big, heavy duty equipment. And we sit in that piece of equipment for, 10 or 12 hours, obviously getting out for breaks and things like that. But most of your time is you're sitting, operating a piece of equipment, and you're making decisions and you're thinking. And a couple of the things, I used to joke with my wife about how my office was really small. I was a professional logger for over 20 years. I was a fellow buncher operator, and I said my office was really small. I could even hit my knees on the front of the machine if I wanted to. And you sit in that machine, and you're doing your job. And once you get a few years into this, a lot of what you do is automatic. Your eye sees X, your hands do Y. And it's just the way it is. You're not making this conscious choice where I have to go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. It's making that choice, subconsciously. With that, though, you now have time to think. And so the logger of today has a lot of time to think about things. And a lot of times, and again, it's not necessarily the healthiest lifestyle because you're sitting all day, you're drinking coffee or sugar drinks, and you're not exercising. You're sitting. I used to joke. I was an operator before GPS was a thing. Well, GPS has revolutionized logging, mechanized logging, anyways. And for me, I used to joke. I said GPS made me fat because I used to get out and walk, and walking through the woods is good. And that's your first year's class. You talked a lot about, hey, get out and walk. Yeah. It's good to be out in the woods, and it's good to smell bark and all that things. I make that joke regularly. For those of you who don't know, Tori taught us the first year that there's some chemical in bark that inherently makes you happy. So going for a walk in the woods can make you happy for a number of reasons. So anyways, when GPS came in, I'm sitting in the cab more. I'm not walking. I'm not checking out what's around me because I see where I am, opposed to when we didn't have it. You didn't know, you were guessing all the time where you were. So anyways, you have lots of time to think. And that can bring up some mental health issues, and you're working long days, you're working in the dark, you're working some are working overnight, and all those are stressors. And you go on top of that, you go on the weather. The weather is not always cooperative. We're thankful while we're taping this podcast today was 6 degrees when I got up this morning, and that's logger cold. And honestly, last winter and the winter before that, we didn't see many 6 degrees. In fact, by my house is the Kennebec River, and for the last 2 years, it hasn't frozen over. This year, it's frozen over, and they're ice fishing on it. But so, anyways, you have the weather is a stressor. We're sometimes traveling far. The markets are not great for loggers right now. So that all kind of combines in where we're now looking for strategies to handle stress, handle your mind, maybe in some ways, help good strategies for the family and bring home. So I don't know if that was a long rambling answer, but that's kind of where we came from, and that is our need. Now, I'm not saying that our need is any different necessarily than other careers, but I will say this, that we're not getting the exercise, which again is something you taught us is very important to get, is exercise. And we have a lot of time to think where our subconscious is doing the work, but our conscious isn't necessarily. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's often automatic.
And I have learned the past 2 years a lot about the loggers. I ask a lot of questions, right? Because I don't sit where they sit, and so to be able to really get to them and talk to them about things, it is really that same thing. We're all human beings, right? And trying to get them to understand that, like, you're isolated. You're not talking to anybody during the day. You're not getting out and walking around. You're, eating whatever's in your lunchbox, and who knows what that is, right? Drinking coffee and doing all of those things. And maybe thinking about the stressors that you have. I mean, they have families just like the rest of us do, and their job is dangerous. So not only are they thinking about, I need to get out of work at 4:00 because I need to go take the kids here, or I got to do this with my wife. So, we don't have that argument because that happens. but they're thinking about, well, I got to make sure I do this right, and or I have to make sure that the weather's good. And those are some really good things that they're good, but that I did learn from the loggers that they have the same stressors. And when I talk to them about their mental health, I like to say stress instead because they like that word a little bit better. Um, but they are dealing with the same sorts of the mental health pressures, and even the stigma,
Hmm.
that everybody else does. So it has been and I've learned so much about them. And I have told them, go hug a tree, guys. And they all look at me kind of funny and laugh. But I did, yeah, that chemical in the tree, it helps you create dopamine, which is your happy chemical. Trying to talk to them about, other things like instead of going home and sitting in the recliner, and grabbing that nice ice cold beer and then not talking to anybody, that's really not helpful if you've had a stressful day. And it seemed like they really they enjoyed that. Have you, I know I've received some phone calls, maybe not all from them, but some of their wives found my card in their pocket, and said, hey, my husband's struggling. What can you help me out here? And we've done that a couple times, which I thought was huge,
Mm.
in breaking that barrier. And I'm excited to go back this year and talk about some signs and symptoms so they can help each other out. Have you heard or have you had any contacts with anybody about what they're really getting from this training, with NAMI?
I have. It's interesting. Just to go back just a second to
Yeah.
let me avoid that question, but um, it's interesting that the population of the today's logger is the is a person who likes to be outdoors, likes to be very independent, and generally doesn't work with anybody else. We work independently as a team. Most crews are 3 or 4 people crews, but you may be on the same job and the same within half mile of each other, but you may not ever say anything to them all day. Now we encourage them to talk a little bit because we want accountability. Part of the safety whole aspect
Right.
that we want to do is we want them, hey, you shouldn't wonder where a guy is at quitting time, because you talked to him 2 hours ago, you knew where he was. Um, so we encourage that, but sometimes that interaction is very quickly like, "Hey, I'm here, I'm doing okay. Um, I'm over in the northeast corner." So there's sometimes that there's very little interaction, and that's what we like as loggers. I mean, I am not the normal logger who will stand up in front of a class and teach something. That's not the normal logger. The normal logger would like to be cutting wood, 5, 6, 7 days a week by themselves. So, and what we didn't realize, or maybe the way the society is that it's really healthy to talk. Even if it is just about sports or the weather, but it's important to have that engagement, and so to be able to. Uh, I think one of the real benefits to our training is we bring them together and we keep the trainings moving, and they get a point to talk with their peers that some of them may have worked with each other 20 years ago, but they're just catching up, and it gives them a chance to talk, and then you're giving them strategies to handle some of that, and tell them that, hey, going home night after night and go sit in the recliner and watching the TV and just having a beer, maybe it'd be better to do some exercise, low impact.
Yes.
A walk is not a bad idea. Maybe not when it's so icy, but unless you got your grippers on. But so we have heard some very positive feedback about your class and what they're taking from it, and how much they like the presentation, which honestly, sometimes we struggle to get something back from them.
Yes. Yeah.
As far as the evaluations are concerned, and being able to get real positive feedback. Hey, this is what we like. Maybe next year we should talk about this. So again, we've been able to, with you and actually 2 other trainers, be able to build on, hey, next year we want this. And that's good because I think, anyways, I don't know that. Maybe this is something we should source out a little bit, but I do think that they're looking forward to it.
Okay.
As far as the looking forward to the topics, and because that's as one of our mandates. One of our mandates is the training cannot be boring. It can't be the same old. It can't be what's expected. We want to give them something new so that they look forward to it.
And I get excited about it. I really do. I love to sit with them and talk with them, and we laugh and we joke. I tell them laughter is good for you. Comedy, it does all these great things for your body. And being able to give them some tips on their own wellness. And I always ask them whenever I go back. Well, it's only the third year I'm going, but when I went back last year, I was like, "So, does anybody remember?" They're like, "No, but we remember you, right?" So, but I do ask them, "Do you remember when we were talking about some of those things that you do for yourself? Give me some other things." I do know that they all like outdoor activities, recreational activities, fishing, hunting. They love to be with their families. A lot of them have dogs, which is something that I'm really big into. I like my dogs too. But even building on top of that and being able to give them some tips on how they can incorporate that, which makes it a little bit easier, right? Because I'm not up there telling them you should do this and you should do that. It is okay. Tell me about what you do, and let's see how we can turn that into your mental wellness or your mental health. I am excited that this year we're going to again give them some tools, right? Some to recognize some signs and symptoms within themselves, their family members, or their coworkers. I think that was a topic because we want to eventually talk to them about de-escalation, right? Yeah. So, and it is great because it's not just the loggers; it's the business owners,
Sure is.
the insurance people that they're there. All of you guys are there, and so it's really, really nice with that. Have you heard anything from the insurance agents on how this may be helping or not helping? Either
I
way?
haven't heard anything from them. I'm sorry. And probably because I've never asked.
Yeah.
The insurance agents we try to stay in close contact with, but they give us what we ask for, and I can't remember ever asking. So it's a good question to ask.
I was just interested.
Yep.
It's like one of those things. And I am looking forward to hearing more about how this is helping, or and I plan on if I could just remember who all the owners are, so I could talk to them, I'd be good. But there's so many people, and
There's so many, and there's obviously some big personality owners. No question about
yes.
that. But really, there's a fair amount of them. Really, it's interesting on the ownership side of this. Most of them didn't wake up, in their teens or 20s and say, "I want to own a logging company." What they woke up and got passionate for is they wanted to cut wood, and then one day they bought a skidder. And then they bought something else. And then they bought something else and realized they couldn't run it all. So they hired their best buddy. And then their best buddy worked for them for a while, or maybe still does, but they've added 2 more pieces of equipment, which has added 2 more people that they've added to the company. And then next thing you know, at one point I worked for a company that had almost 50 employees. And he clearly started with a chainsaw and a cable skidder and just kept buying equipment. And then next thing you know, he had to put somebody in that piece of equipment. And it's interesting, one of the things that they've come to us to say, and where you fit in very well in this, is that, hey, give us the tools to manage. I didn't start this company to manage. I started this company because I liked the work. I was talented at the work. So I could make money doing this. And then next thing you know, I hired a bunch of employees. Well, I don't have any HR talent. In fact, most of them, if they were, will spend as little or no time in the office. They have an office person who does that, who happen to know nothing about logging. They just happen to know numbers. They know what to report. So the owners themselves has said to us, give us some tools, and where your class is going to fit in really well, because you're going to talk about signs and symptoms. They would love to be able to see signs and symptoms of a developing problem, because they certainly don't want, they don't want a problem. They want everybody to go in, do their job, and then go home just as well, maybe a little dirtier, certainly tireder, but go home, spend time with their family and make a good living. That's what they want. And if they could get ahead of some of these mental health challenges, that can, and I say this in the same way that I talk to my students. I teach separately. I teach a logging program, and I talk to my students about if you can catch a problem before it actually becomes a problem, then you can plan out. You can make plans to fix this, and it's cheaper. You'll get a better product of it because you're not doing it. You're not doing it in the middle of bad weather because you planned on it. If you can find something like, hey, that's cracked. It's not broken, but that's cracked. Then you can schedule a welder to come in. You can pick the day, and you can pre-order the steel or whatever you got to do to make this right, and it'll be a much better fix. Mental health signs and symptoms is no different. If we can see that somebody is having an issue, maybe not just huge, it might be just small, but it's constant. And if we can address that, it's a lot easier to cure early on than when it becomes Everest. And then once it becomes Everest, then you could be looking at lost time. You could be looking at bad workmanship. I can look back when I was a commercial logger, there were 2 times when I found out later that this particular person was having a really tough time, where there were large mistakes.
Yeah.
And large mistakes that really should never have happened. But obviously their mind was not on their job. And so that mistake happened. And nobody wants mistakes.
No.
I mean, nobody wants to, and nobody wants lost revenue because of mistakes. And nobody wants the fact that you got to redo something because of the mistake. And mistakes end up just costing money, and it can be exponentially. One of these, it was a large mistake because the person that needed to pay attention to it wasn't. And because they had this big life stress that at the time, at my level, I didn't know anything about. And all intents and purposes, they were on the job, they were doing the work. It wasn't my job, or they were supervising themselves, just like I supervised myself. And so I had no idea that things were going sideways. Until we found out, that this big mistake, and it's like, how can this happen? How can that happen? And then we find out, 6 months or later that he's had this big stress in his life. And well, of course that makes total sense now.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And I mean, in mental health, again, whenever I talk to people, there's no black and white in mental health.
No, there's not.
It is very, very gray. So, I look forward to in talking to the guys about, hey, look at your buddy, get to know what they're doing, and I know some of them are pretty good friends. I know that some of them actually have their younger children there. I noticed that a couple of years a gentleman would walk in, and I'm like, you look like you're 12, right? And he's like, oh, I'm 18 or I'm 22. And these are guys that are following other family members into this business. So I do remember talking to them and saying, you need to take care of them. They're just starting their career. And I know that maybe you only have this many years to go, but you need to take care of them and get them ready for the stressors that are going to happen in this career and in life. You're there. Let them know it's okay to talk. So I have noticed that quite a bit in there too.
Logging is very generational.
Yeah.
There's no 2 ways about it. There's a lot of second and third generation or fifth generation people coming up through, and it's very family oriented. So there's a lot of brothers and sisters that are involved in the business, and so there is that, and of course, that adds to the complications. When you work with your family, you can't get away from your family because they're at work and they're at home. So that's a complication. But again, we're providing tools to help understand and see these problems coming ahead.
And in the signs and symptoms, that'll be covered too, that generational difference on how it might look different in somebody who is 19 years old and somebody who is in their 50s or 60s. And we do have people in logging that are in their 50s and 60s and above. So I noticed that too.
It is not uncommon to have people in their 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, the average logger is 50 something.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon at all. And the other thing that I think is important, and again, I love the fact that you're kind of not focusing, but paying attention to the generations aspect of it, because the older ones have or have not discovered ways to get through things. The families aren't necessarily centrally located as they once were around the dinner table kind of thing, where they can learn some of those generational strategies. Last year, in the class that I helped teach, we talked a lot about there is no such thing as common sense. It's a common experience. And when, you take a crew that's an older crew that have been working together for a long time, not only do they know the stressors, but they also know how they can really help a guy when he's down, because they've been there. They've seen him down before, or they knew that when they were down for whatever reason.
Right.
And now you bring in somebody that's new. They don't see that. They just see, gee, he's awful grumpy today. Yeah. And maybe he's grumpy for a good reason, or maybe he's not. Maybe he just didn't get enough sleep or not. But if it's a pattern, that's an issue that the younger person may not have the insight, not the common experience to say, okay, this is an issue that we should be addressing. There's something going on. And
yeah. And that's one, I know that's one thing that the past years I've said, that make sure you take care of each other, because nobody knows more about the experience than the person sitting beside you, or you're the person that you're working with. So that is something, trying to get them to help each other. And I'm hoping that this year is just as great as the past two. I'm looking forward to it. Again, we're starting in Denmark.
We're starting in Denmark,
and
yes.
We're ending in Fort Kent.
We're ending in Fort Kent. And
what a beautiful place.
And we're taking a large left turn in in Augusta,
yes.
And we're headed to Vermont.
Oh, yes.
So we're yes. So this is our second year in Vermont, and we're grateful that you're joining us. And we'll see 1,000 to 1,200 loggers or truck drivers by the time the training's done, and probably around 200 different companies. So there's a good chance to have some influence, and a good chance to really connect with people and give them some strategies, give them some tools and tips and all the things that you need that, we don't necessarily, we weren't necessarily taught as a kid. One of the things that I say again to my students, and I encourage any company to do this, is be very positive on the radio. Now, when I started in logging, the radio was the two-way radio that we communicate with was hugely important. I mean, we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Okay. We didn't have phones that we could take pictures on. Everything we had to discuss was discussed on the radio. And you can really have a negative influence on somebody on the radio, and maybe not even mean to.
Right.
And so that's again, I with my students, I really like to encourage them to be positive about it. In fact, I was just teaching a class this morning. You'll get a kick out of this. It was a radio class for high school students, and I was teaching this class, and they do a project. One has the directions, and one has the actual project, and they sit in separate rooms and talk over radio. And one of the students couldn't. And I have a rule. You say something 3 times. If the other person doesn't understand it, you have to come up with something different, because they're not understanding it. So no matter if you just say it with an angrier voice, it doesn't change that they don't understand it.
Yeah, right.
And one of them even went to the far as he was calling the other guy an unhappy name. He was calling him an idiot. I said, no. I said, that doesn't move the ball ahead. That doesn't describe anything of what you're trying to build. I said, so just because they don't understand what you're saying, that is more your problem being able to communicate than their listening problem. You got to get on the same page. And I encourage all the loggers and high school students and my students that it is all about when you're on the radio to make sure that you're being perceived positively, because you could be making a big impact on somebody.
Absolutely. That is pretty funny, though. I can totally relate to that
Yep.
in my past life. So
I get it. I get it. I've been a firefighter for 30 years.
yeah.
And the funniest one, and you'll love this, and I think your listeners will love the story too. We got called out of bed at like 2 a.m. for a fully involved single wide trailer fire on a road that wasn't very long and didn't have that many houses on it. We get on scene. We can't find this trailer. And dispatch just keeps repeating to us, it's fully involved trailer. Okay. Like we didn't understand it the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And we go back and forth for quite a while trying to find this fire. And, and you could tell their frustration. And, all we can tell you, it's a fully involved trailer fire. They didn't have an address. They didn't have the person's number to call back. Well, I think eventually they did. It doesn't matter. Anyways, we eventually find a dog wandering the neighborhood and figure out where the dog came from with a single wide trailer with the lights on. So we knock on the door, figuring thing. The door opens up and there's light smoke inside the trailer. So what truly happened was a gentleman decided to burn his trailer down, started the fire, let his dog out, walked 5 miles to a buddy's house, called 911 and said that trailer's fully involved. Well, the problem is it never caught.
Wow.
We put the fire up with what was left of the fire with a cup of water.
Well, there you go.
And we could see 3 places where they had started it, and of course dispatch, they only knew that it was a single wide trailer fully involved. Turns out it was not.
Communication is a big thing, isn't it?
Communication is a big thing.
And I talk about that a lot when I talk to these guys about their mental health. But not only do I talk to them about their verbal communication, but also their nonverbal. So they are a great group, and I'm looking forward to this year. But this isn't our only collaboration. We have some other things coming up. We're going to be doing some cards to give out with Man Therapy.
Man Therapy, a website that I couldn't recommend enough.
Yeah, Man Therapy is very important.
Yes.
And I know that some of them have looked at that.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yep. But don't be fooled by the name.
No, don't be fooled by the name.
It is, it says Man Therapy, but it really, we joked in our office that it really should be human therapy.
Yes.
Because really there is stuff on there for everybody. And they do a lot of things with bacon. So how bad can it be?
Yeah, bacon and yoga. If you get a chance to go on Man Therapy, I think it's .org. .org, and take a look up the yoga. It's so much fun. It's pretty funny stuff, but it's also stuff that, you can really understand, and it kind of gets down to the core of, it's okay to reach out for help. But it's good stuff. I've taken the head test too, which is it's a lot of fun. Kind of lets me know where I'm at. So that's one thing we're going to be working with. You also have a magazine, right?
We do. We have what's called The Voice magazine, and it comes out quarterly, and it's sent to all our logging contractors. I believe it's sent to all the insurance agents, and then we also send it to all the CTE high schools, all the vocational schools. So, in fact, I was just at one this morning with that class, and I see on their back wall there's 3 of our magazines. I said, perfect. They're getting out there.
Yeah, and I'm working on an article for that. I believe it's done. I'm just getting it proofread to make sure it's okay. So we're doing the article. We're also doing some tailgate talks that you have. So
what those are is each logging company monthly should get together and do a safety meeting. And what each year in these safety trainings, we try to give them something to take away, something for the company to take away to help them be safer. 2 years ago, we did a set of 12 posters. Last year, we developed a sign that they can just fill out at the end of their job to communicate who they are and how they operate. And then now this year, we're going to give them 12 pre-made lesson plans for doing those tailgate talks. And one of them is going to be on mental health.
Absolutely. Working on that too.
Yep.
And then the last thing I think that we're collaborating on is your hump day, which I think is hilarious.
So we do part of my mission is I do safety and training for the PLC not just over these safety trainings, which we spent a lot of time talking about, but I also do it with, and I also do other stuff. One of them is I read an article in that magazine. One of the other ones that we do, and I say this because we've had a great result in it, is that we've taken actual injuries that loggers have sustained and told that story.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting. A couple of the loggers said it came to me with their stories and say, I want this to go to every logger in the world. I want people to know this because there was no reason for me to get this injury. It was out of ignorance that I got hurt here, and I want everybody to know it. And so we're doing one with you on mental health. And again, we want to get that out in yet a different way so that that people can have access to it and learn from it.
I have to say lots of firsts going on because I never thought, number one, I'd be a cartoon character or write an article for anything or even talk to loggers. Like, so.
I'm with you on the article thing. Yeah. I am not a gifted writer at all. So I'm with you there.
Well, I'm working on it. So I'm hoping it all works out. And again, I'm looking forward to this year, and I really look forward to continued collaboration. And I know that NAMI does too. So.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration on our end. It has really been, very positively received, and you've certainly made a home with the loggers. So
I love that. I really do love that. And with that, I think, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up during this?
Not that I can think of, other than it's great as always to work with you.
Absolutely, Don. Thank you so much for coming. And for all of you watching this, thank you for taking the time out to spend with Don and I today.